Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodananda Rajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Yamuna Tira Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Vihari Gopijana Vallabha Gopijana Vallabha Yasuranandana Yamunatira Yamunatira Gopijana Vallabha Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Jai Holy Bhakti Vedanta Sai Maharaj Bhakti Anand Puri Vai Chaitanya, Saraswati Thakur Jai. Ram Saga Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasudeva Bhaktavinda Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shankunda Radha Kunda Giri Goran Vijay Vrindavan Dham Vijay Mathura Dham Vijay Vitam Vijay Mani Vijay He Amai Vijay Tulasi Devi Vijay Bhakti Devi Vijay Samarita all glories to the seven devotees. All glories to the seven devotees. All glories to the seven devotees. All glories to Yeah. This is the garden of devotees. Yes. So around here we always read from the Transcendental Diary, Travels with His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, August 1976 to October 1976, by Hari Salvi Lal. So, Srila Prabhupada is still in Vrindavan. We have not seen Charanara Vindam Prabhu in Prabhupada's garden for a few days. Srila Prabhupada noted Srila Prabhupada noted his absence in the evening and asked me to inquire where he was. So today, as I gave Srila Prabhupada his noon massage, I informed him that Akshayananda Maharaj had ordered Charanara Vindam to leave the temple. Why? Prabhupada asked with concern. Well, Maharaj said that Charanara Vindam was too eccentric. Apparently, he causes trouble in the ashram. Akshayananda said he was always arguing with him and refused to do what he was asked. So he kicked him out. Prabhupada was not at all happy to hear the news. How is it that Akshayananda can send him out? Well, he is the temple president, I said. So I guess he felt that he couldn't have anyone in the ashram who would follow his instructions. The best servant is the best leader, Prabhupada said, talking about Akshayananda. He was clearly perturbed by what he felt was a misuse of position by Akshayananda. Why did he send him away? Even if there was some difficulty, he was doing service for me, looking after my garden. Now who will do it? I had anticipated that Prabhupada would want to know what other arrangements had been made for the garden's upkeep. And so I had asked Akshayananda if he had a replacement. Now I informed Srila Prabhupada that Akshayananda had admitted there was no one else available. Just see, Prabhupada said, with vexation, and fell silent, not bringing the subject up again. Prabhupada had a lengthy meeting with Srila Kadyumna had a lengthy meeting with Srila Prabhupada this afternoon to finalize his reply to the Blitz article on to reply to the Blitz article on Sai Baba. Kadyumna read from the opening paragraph of the article, which was entitled God is an Indian. His contemporary avatar rests in the trinity of Sri Ru Baba, Sai Baba, and Prem Baba to come. So Satya Sai Baba, the second of the triple incarnation, asserted in the course of a marathon interview to add. In my present avatar, I have come armed with the fullness of the power of the formless God to save humanity. Hare Krishna. Yeah. Srila Prabhupada dictated the online of the letter to Pradyumna. Dear Sai Baba, just recently in the Blitz paper published on, give the date, we were surprised to find one article, God is an Indian. And you have claimed to become an incarnation of God to save the human society. What is the ground of your claiming as incarnation, and what you have done to save the human society? Will you explain for enlightenment for us, or many of us? We have got the list of incarnations recorded in the Vedic scriptures, and their receptive activities also. Sorry, their respective activities also. So where is that record in the Vedic scriptures about your appearing as incarnation? Lord Krishna's incarnations, sorry, Lord Krishna's incarnation's ness is fully described in Srimad Bhagavatam. Similarly, Lord Ramachandra's incarnation ness, or Lord Buddha's incarnation, Lord Chaitanya's incarnation, we have got full information in Vedic literatures. Where is your incarnation described? Will you kindly give the reference? Anyone can say, like you, that one is incarnation, so it has become a fashion nowadays. But is that claim the only proof of one's becoming incarnation? Some such authorized claim of becoming an incarnation is certainly ridiculous. Then you have claimed to take form what he has written. Pradyumna, we read Baba's claim to being an avatar, armed with the fullness of the power of the formless God. Prabhupada continued, so you have claimed to take the form of the formless God. But we see in the Bhagavad Gita that God is never formless. He had Pradyumna read out verse 724 from the Gita and its purport, telling Pradyumna to quote the verse in the letter, along with a quote from Yamunacharya found in the purport. Prabhupada went on with his dictation. Only the rascals and less intelligent class of men think that God is formless, and when he incarnates, he takes a particular form. So in this connection, the statement of Bhagavatam is especially important. Brahman Paramat Paramatmiki Bhagavaniti Shakrate. Brahman is impersonal, Paramatma is localized, and Bhagavan is the supreme personality of Godhead. Voicing aloud Prabhupada's statement, as he wrote it down, Prabhupada repeated, Brahman is the impersonal. We're going to stop here. Any questions? Sai Baba. I told you the other day we had a devotee once in Berlin. He came from Sai Baba. He became a devotee. And no, he told us about him. That he actually had mystic powers. But as we see here, actually had no understanding of God. So these mystic powers are possible by big austerities and penances like that. You know, like in former ages, the yogis were becoming very powerful by their mystic powers, by their like even walking on the water, gliding, you know, or the sun rays and all this. You know, but that doesn't make them devotees. What to say, making them God. Um, so, any questions or comments on Saigon? Yeah?
People, the followers of such old gurus, is it more difficult to convert them? normal people, like innocent people.
In Buenos Aires, in Argentina, we made friends with them. But they had nothing to say. Actually, they never said anything. They just like kirtan and like the prasad, like that. Yeah. We sometimes they also, when we went on Harinam during the day, they also appeared. And this devotee who became, as this follower of Sai Baba here in Berlin, I remember, I told you the other day, he was a very expert piano player. Can you see? Very expert in playing piano. And so he took his piano out on the street and chanted Hare Krishna with the piano. I don't know where he's now. I have never seen him again since many years. Anyway, so we accept everybody who's chanting Hare Krishna and who's sincere, at least humble. If, of course, if they come in like, I'm the big one, I'm God like this we do not tolerate. Anyway, so any more? Anything else? You want to say something? No? So what is the language now? Did you decide? Hast du das schon entschieden? Was die Sprache heute ist? Put it properly. Huh? Was? English? Yeah, put it English. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we continue with the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Every Saturday we read from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And we are reading from, what is the name of the chapter?
The liberation of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya.
Sarvabhauma. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Govinda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Govinda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura.
So we continue with Madhya Lila, 6th chapter, verse 168. Vedanamaniya Purahaya Tanastika. Vedashraya Nastika Vada Gautaka. Vedanamaniya Purahaya Tanastika. Vedashraya Nastika Vada
Vedanamaniya Bauddha Hayata Nastika.
Vedanamaniya Buddha Hayata Nastika.
Vedashraya Nastikya Vada Bauddha Kedika.
Vedashraya Nastika Vada Bauddha Vedanamaniya Bodhaya Tanastika.
Vedanamaniya Bodhaya Tanastika.
Vedashaya Nastika Vabodhati Adhika.
Vedashaya Nastika Vabodhati. Ladies, you know.
Vedanamaniya Bodhaya Tanastika.
Vedanamaniya Bodhaya Tanastika. Vedashaya Nastika Vedanamaniya Bodhaya Tanastika. Vedashaya Nastika Veda, the Vedic literature. Na, not Maniya, accepting. Buddha, the Buddhists. Aya, are. Ta, indeed. Nastika, agnostic. Veda Ashvaya, taking shelter of Vedic civilization. Nastik Javada, agnosticism. Baudake, even Buddhists. Adhika, surpassing. Translation. The Buddhists do not recognize the authority of the Vedas. Therefore, they are considered agnostic. However, those who have taken shelter of the Vedic scriptures yet preach agnosticism in accordance with Mayavad philosophy are certainly more dangerous than the Buddhists. Actually, this is the conversation there, not conversation, no, between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. The story goes that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had just taken sannyas. He came to Puri, and he came all alone. He left all his associates behind because there had been a problem. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had taken sannyas, and because of that he was traveling with a danda. Sannyasis are traveling with danda, not normally. So Nityananda was very upset that he had taken sannyas because he understood who he was, and he didn't see the necessity for he was beyond all these rules and regulations, all the ashrams and varnas and all this. So then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was taking a bath, and he entrusted his danda to Nityananda. And while he was bathing, Nityananda broke the danda and threw it in the river. He was so upset. So then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came back after taking his bath, and he noticed that the danda was not there. And when he was informed what happened to the danda, he became upset, angry with his followers, because he was actually complying with some, duty that he had accepted. So then he became angry, and he didn't want this companionship anymore. So he insisted that he travel alone. So in this way he came to Puri, and he entered the temple. And when he was in front of the altar, he was overcome with transcendental ecstasy, and he fell to the ground. And there were some guards, and they saw that he had laid down on the ground in front of the altar. So they became upset. They thought he was sleeping in front of the altar. Anyway, so they were about to take him and throw him out or something. And there was Swami watching the scene. And actually it says Chaitanya Charitamrita, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu he was extremely beautiful. This is one of the qualities of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was very tall. He had all the symptoms of great personality. So when Sarvabhaumacharya saw him enter the temple, he was very surprised. And besides that, he saw that he was he appeared to be very young. And he actually had taken sannyas. Hmm? This was actually contradiction. Normally, when you take sannyas, you complied with the foremost, not I say, not the foremost, the other ashrams, no, brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas. Not that a young boy would take sannyas. Yeah. Anyway, so when he saw him, he felt compassion. No, he thought, oh, he's too young for sannyas. I have to educate him properly so he doesn't become confused. And then he saw he had fallen down, immediately interfered. So he gave the order to the servant, to the guards, to take him to his home. And Sarvabhaumacharya was a big, he was a very famous, learned person. He was a pandit. And it says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he was very famous also. From all over India, people came to study under him. And he was the Pandit of the court, part of, what was the king name? Pratapurut. Anyway, so he took him, he gave the order to they take him to his home. Because he had heard about all this, sometimes great devotees would experience some ecstatic feelings and all that. So he wanted to study him from close. He took them. He told him, put him there and this and that. And then he noticed that he was immovable, and he wasn't sure if he still was breathing. So he got some cotton. I say cotton, cotton. Put it in front of his nose, but to see if he was actually still breathing. And he noticed, yes, he was breathing, very, very, very slow. And then I don't remember what else he did, but then he finished, and in the meantime, the devotees had come to the temple in Puri. And this was a topic there. There had been a very nice young sannyasi, very beautiful sannyasi, and he had fallen down in the temple, Puri temple. And Sarvabhaumacharya had taken him to his home. So when the devotees heard that, they knew what to do. They had experienced that before with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They knew that the only thing that would brought him back to external consciousness was a good kirtan, heavy kirtan. Like nowadays they say, heavy metal kirtan. Anyway, so they immediately went to Sarvabhaumacharya's home and they started the kirtan. And as expected, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came back to external consciousness. And so, devotees immediately wanted to convince him to surrender to him because he was, supreme person of Godhead, executing one of his pastimes like this. But he was skeptical. He was a devotee. He was very learned and everything. But he didn't take it as a fact. But he felt great compassion for Chaitanya. So he offered to educate him, to teach him in Vedic knowledge. So he would, especially, Vedanta Sutra. He thought that without knowing Vedanta Sutra, he will not be strong, not become strong in his determination. So then he offered, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu surprisingly accepted his invitation. He accepted the invitation. And then it says Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sarvabhaumacharya offered him a little elevated seat. Little elevated. And he sat down there below him because he was a sannyasi. And then he started giving explanation to the Vedanta Sutra. He spoke and spoke. He spoke days. But then after a while, he couldn't understand what was going on because this sannyasi had not asked any question. And so he asked him, what did you not have any question? And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said something very, very nice. He said, actually, I understand Vedanta Sutra, but your explanations are like the cloud covering the, look at this. Vedanta Sutra is like the sun, in the outro, how's that? Illuminating or something. Anyway, but your commentaries are like the clouds covering the sun. No, when Sarvabhaumacharya heard that, no, it's mentioned in Chaitanya Charita, he never heard that from a disciple. Wow. So he turned around, no, and said, now, okay, let's hear your explanation. And this is what we're reading here now. And in the end, you will see it. Maybe I will not be here while you come to that point. But at the end, Sarvabhaumacharya surrendered to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He realized that actually this person must have been the compiler, the composer of the Vedanta Sutra. Must be God. And then as he realized that, I have a book in the library here, the 100 verses of Sarvabhaumacharya. Sarvabhaumacharya. 100 verses. So when he surrendered to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he spoke 100 verses in Sanskrit. He was so learned, so expert. And anyway, so now we're hearing about the explanation that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving. The Buddhists do not recognize the authority of the Vedas. Therefore, they are considered agnostics. However, those who have taken shelter of the Vedic scriptures yet preach agnosticism in accordance with the Mayavadi philosophy are certainly more dangerous than the Buddhists. Pretty heavy, no? It says here the Buddhists are just agnostics. Actually, we always pray this Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachari Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Nirvishesha Shunyavadi. This is what is mentioned here. Nirvishesha is impersonalism, and Sunyavadi is void. Actually, these concepts of the Buddhists and the impersonalists. It said the problem. Actually, I heard the Prabhupada compose his prayer. He composed it, gave it to his disciples to recite. So it says that actually Prabhupada, true follower of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, came to the West, to refute the impersonal and the voidist concepts. And there's also a story, Leela is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to the south, and he met the Buddhists. And the whole spectacle, how do you say that in spectacle? And finally, it became offensive to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then it says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, all of a sudden the eagle appeared. And he grabbed a plate and let it fall down from up there, and it fell right on the head of the Buddhist leader. But this is what I remember. Anyway, so Buddha actually is an incarnation. It's actually Shakyavesha avatar. So he is also an incarnation of Krishna, but with a very specific purpose. As devotees, we know the story that there was a time. Actually, Buddha appeared 3,000 years ago, before Christ, and at that time, there were priests who were using the rules from the Shastra. Actually, this is it's a process, where they kill an animal and then they revive it, give it a new existence, by chanting mantras. In this way, they prove the potency of the mantras. In former ages, by executing their sacrifices, fire sacrifices, they normally had 3 Brahmins. One would prepare the ground. The other was, what was that? Preparing what? Doing the arena? How is it that in English? Huh? Yeah, arena. Then the other one was one with a fire. There was another one who would check the mantras that they were properly, how you say, chanted. You know? Because normally the mantras have a lot of potency, especially when people are qualified to chant them. You know? And then, so there was a Brahmin who would check the mantras were properly chanted. Because by not chanting them properly, they might have produced a different result, even the opposite result of what they desired. Anyway, so I remember when we went to Vrindavan, it was in 70, I don't know which year it was, when the deities, deities in Vrindavan were installed. And it was a long ceremony. And I remember Prabhupada had asked for many Brahmins from Vrindavan, so respectable Brahmins to carry out the sacrifices. So to give more, I say prestige, no? Into the temple, to ISKCON. They had the respectable Brahmins participate in the ceremony. And then Srila Prabhupada in the end, well, first of all, Prabhupada had the custom that when there were important people, normally he had them speak also. I remember he had somebody, I think it was a minister or something like that. Yeah? So he had him speak, and then Prabhupada spoke. And he said something very, very important. He said, actually, we didn't really need all these sacrifices. We could have installed the deities just chanting the holy name. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. He mentions in the fourth canto. Again mentioned it in the purpose. Anyway, so Buddha, no, actually these Brahmins, they were using these mantras to kill animals and to provide meat to the meat eaters. So this was actually offensive. This was not its original meaning. So Buddha came. It says out of his compassion, he said, stop these sacrifices. And when they were turning around and how you say, what's it in English? Herausfordern? What is that?
Challenge.
So when they were challenging him, how about, they said, this is Vedic, this is prescribed in the Shastras. So Buddha rejected the Vedic. He rejected the Vedic. And so after a while, as we know, Shankaracharya again to introduce the Vedas. But he didn't present the Vedas completely. So he gave, first of all, he gave his interpretation, impersonal interpretation. Because from Buddhism, from Voidism, to the ultimate conclusions of the Vedas, it's a very, how you say, big distance. How do you say in English?
Leap.
Huh?
Big leap.
A big link. So he kind of made a compromise. And actually he also had he complied with his, how you say, function, to introduce the Vedas again. And then after Shankaracharya, the most important Vaishnavacharya, Sampradayacharya, Ramanujacharya, Madhva, they started arguing, discussing, refuting the Brahman conceptions. And then it's an interesting thing that when you go to Mayapur, you go to the Chaitanya Mat, the temple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, his temple there. And when you go to the temple, to the altar, you see, first of all, I remember the name of the Radha Krishna deities, and then you see also the deity of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu on the side, indicating that actually Radha Krishna Naha Anya, that actually Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is a combination of Radharani and Krishna. It was a mission. This was the reason Chaitanya, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati put Chaitanya Mahaprabhu on the side of the British. And when you go out of temple, you circumambulate how you say, the dome. The deities are. On the dome, you see four altars. Not altars, they kind of, like this, what is this? Asanas, but with doors to close us. So, and there you find the four Sampradaya chai. And the idea behind this was that actually Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave the ultimate conclusion of the four Sampradaya. He united these all the different Sampradaya. Anyway, so I don't know how. Oh, Buddha. So Buddha, after Buddha appeared Shankaracharya, and then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So I didn't read the purport. Sorry. Although the Buddhists are directly opposed to Vaishnava philosophy, it can easily be understood that the Shankarites are more dangerous because they accept the authority of the Vedas, yet act contrary to Vedic instruction. Vedashraya Nastityavada means agnosticism under the shelter of Vedic culture, and refers to the monistic philosophy of the Mayavadis. Lord Buddha abandoned the authority of Vedic literature and therefore rejected the ritualistic ceremonies and sacrifices recommended in the Vedas. His nirvana philosophy means stopping all material activities. Lord Buddha did not recognize the presence of transcendental forms and spiritual activities beyond the material world. He simply described voidism beyond this material existence. The Mayavadi philosophers offer lip service to Vedic authority, but try to escape the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. They concoct some idea of transcendental position and call themselves Narayana or God. However, God's position is completely different from their concoction. Such Mayavadi philosophers consider themselves above the influence of karma kanda, fruit of activities and their reactions. For them, the spiritual world is equated with the Buddhist voidism. There is very little difference between impersonalism and voidism. Voidism can be directly understood, but the impersonalism enunciated by Mayavadi philosophers is not very easily understandable. Of course, Mayavadi philosophers accept a spiritual existence, but they do not know about the spiritual world and spiritual beings. According to Srimad Bhagavatam 10:32, Yene Ravindaksha Vimuktamanina Svayastabhavada Vishuddha Buddhaya Arudya Krichena Param Param Tataha Patandya Doyat Visha This verse we read yesterday. I gave class yesterday.
Friday.
On Friday. The same verse was in the purport. Remember? Anyone remember? This is a very important verse. The intelligence of the Mayavad is not purified. Therefore, even though they practice austerities for self-realization, they cannot remain within the impersonal Brahmajyoti. Consequently, they fall down again into this material world. Actually, this means, I think I have the book still here. There's another translation of this verse. I actually marked it the other day, and this verse was also in the purpose. And I have a different translation, a more complete translation. It says, someone may say that aside from devotees who always seek shelter of the Lord's lotus feet, there are those who are not devotees, but who have accepted different processes for attaining salvation. what happens to them? In answer, now the verse. In answer to this question, Lord Brahma and the other demigods said, O lotus-eyed Lord, although non-devotees who accept severe austerities and penances to achieve the higher position may think themselves liberated, their intelligence is impure. They fall down from their position of imagined superiority because they have no regard for your lotus feet. That means it says here the impersonalists. They are very elevated by their austerities and others. But then it says Abudaya. Their intelligence is not completely purified. That means they don't understand the necessity to surrender to the lotus feet of the Lord. That means to surrender to the lotus feet of the Lord means to engage in devotional service. And because the impersonalists haven't learned that, sooner or later they again fall down to the tail platform. Why they come? Because it's activity. It's artificial to just remain impersonal. I think inactive. This is so wonderful. Actually, as devotees, we don't stop acting because we don't carry out sinful activities anymore. Then we don't do anything anymore. This is a Mayavadi concept. But actually, we learn how to occupy devotional service. Use all our energy, our senses, and mind, and everything in the service of the Lord. This is the solution. And because of that, it says, there's another verse that says, Sarvapadi vinivuktam tatparinam rishikena rishikesha sevadam bhakti. That means devotion is the definition of devotional service. Devotional service means that you occupy your senses in the service of the master, or how you say, master of the senses, Rishikesh. And when you do this, you become free from upadis. Upadi means all the designations that we have accepted. I'm Indian, I'm German, I'm dark, I'm blonde, I'm who knows what. This is my address, this is my document number, like that. There's so many identifications we have accepted. And then it says, when you become purified, you become free from all these upadis, all these designations. And another effect of occupying the senses in the service of the Lord is that your senses become purified. It's not possible to transcend the material world unless you become purified. Unless all the dust that has accumulated within your heart and all your how's it, above you, how's it above? Upon you? What is it? This is Krishna calls it a process of purification. Purification. That means we don't reject anything, but we learn how to connect everything with Krishna and devotional service. Just like now in the afternoon, some devotees will come from Mayapur. They're on a mission. They are collecting for the temple in Mayapur. Maybe I shouldn't have told you. Now I'm taking this surprise. So they have been here many years back. I think 5 or 6 years back. Yeah, 5 or 6 years back. They came. You were there too? Yeah. So they came in. They spoke very nicely. They inspired everybody to give a donation for the temple. And the devotees made so many promises. It was amazing the quantity that they were promising. I don't want to mention the number. We were, you already mentioned? You already mentioned? Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, we shouldn't tell them what they collected before, because otherwise they become discouraged. Anyway, so everything should be occupied in devotional service. This is what Prabhupada taught us. Prabhupada even used machines, his dictaphone, and also he took flights, airplanes, and all that. In the beginning, when Prabhupada came the first time, beginning when he came to America, he was traveling on a ship, and traveling on a ship is very, very austere. I know because my family also traveled. They traveled from Germany to South America, to Chile. And there was weeks, we were weeks on the ship. And this is a very uncomfortable situation because the ship is always moving. Like, oh, you become all dizzy, you start vomiting, and so on. Very difficult to become accustomed to that. You know, I say that they use. Yeah. Huh?
Swinging clothes.
Yeah. Anyway, and then we also we heard in the Ligamita, we heard that we can read the details of Howard having heart attacks. Was it two? No? Two heart attacks. And Howard later mentioned if I would have a third heart attack, I would have given it. And then what happened actually, and this is also mentioned in Lamita, very, very nice, very beautifully described. That after Howard had the heart attack, the sea became very, very, I say, peaceful. Huh? Very, very peaceful. No more big waves and all this. So it says that the captain of the ship was traveling with his wife. And so they told Prabhupada, they asked Prabhupada, can't you come more often with us? So the sea becomes peaceful. Of course, we know that Krishna was protecting his beautiful. Yeah. So Prabhupada was empowered by Krishna to carry out his mission. Yesterday, the day before, we read something very nice. Prabhupada was talking to some disciples, and Prabhupada was saying, "You must read my books." And then Prabhupada says, "I am also reading my own books." And then Prabhupada said, "Why am I reading my own books?" Because it's very, what is that? Interesting, very interesting. And you know why they are so interesting? The Prabhupada said, I also learned from my books when I read my own books. And then Prabhupada said, you know why this is happening? Because when I sit down in the morning and write my books, actually Krishna said, and Krishna tells me what to write. Hare Krishna. So please read Srila Prabhupada's books very carefully. Prabhupada wasn't an ordinary author who started speculating, but actually Prabhupada was inspired by Krishna. All these books, like we're reading the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bhagavatam during the week, like the Bhagavad Gita. These are actually not Prabhupada's books. I mentioned it also. When Prabhupada came to Germany in 74, this is now 51 years ago, Prabhupada came to Germany. He came to Germany two times, in 69, and then in 74. And we saw something very nice. Actually, we had prepared a studio for him. Sorry if I repeat the whole thing again. You've heard it already. No? So we had prepared a studio because Hansa Duda, our leader, wanted to make some recordings of Srila Prabhupada, singing bhajans. And so we prepared a whole studio with all these egg packages. How's that? Egg package? This is supposed to be very frightening, keeping the sound properly. Anyway, so when Prabhupada started, he played harmonium. And I still remember, he had a little songbook there where he was singing from. And so he played harmonium. Hansuya was playing Madanga. Actually, there was a moment also where Prabhupada criticized his Madanga. He said, you don't know how to play Madanga. And another devotee was playing the kartals. Anyway, so then Now, every now and then, Prabhupada finished a bhajan and he went out and he wanted to hear it. And he sat there, listening very. Actually, he went like this. He was sitting like this. I have the photo there in my room. Actually, just a few days ago, somebody, we published 2 long play records with the bhajans that Prabhupada recorded in Germany, big ones. Now the records are not there anymore. Anyway, so big, it was an album, I say, 2 big records. And so I went to Abenteuer, stayed there a few days, and then one devotee came and he gave me, there were 2 editions, 2 records together and 1 record. And he gave me a gift. He gave me this record. And on the cover of the record, Prabhupada, the photo of Prabhupada is like this. Prabhupada always came out to listen, and then he recorded another bhajan. Then we did, there was a time when we distributed these records. Actually, we went on the street distributing records. And when Hans Ruder found out that we made so much money with the records, he stopped book distribution. And when Prabhupada heard about that, he said, no, better you distribute books. Yes, so now we have so many books, and we are supposed to distribute them. Please to the Prabhupada. This is our debt. How's debt? Yeah, should our debt for sure. We should at least try, to show our, how you say, our gratitude. And there's a text where Prabhupada says, if you love me, distribute my book. And that's why it's so nice. This morning we heard of the result of book distribution. It was very nice. Why? Because now the temple is organizing a Maha Sankirtan there, isn't it? Everyone goes out and distributes books. This is actually the tradition. We should maintain all these traditions, all these, how you say, these things that Prabhupada established. Well, I went off a little here. Actually, Prabhupada is always very important. Any questions or any comments? Ja, für die schon die Klassiker zweimal gehört haben. Entschuldigung. Okay. Yes.
Sometimes Srila Prabhupada writes that Mayavadis are also transcendentalists. But sometimes we find that he says like this, they are more dangerous than Buddhists. So how do we understand this? Transcendentalists at the same time.
Yeah, especially Chaitanya Mahaprabhu even warned us. He said, don't listen to the Mayavadi. By listening to the Mayavadi, you might lose this devotional attitude. Right? But normally when at least in the past, when young people would come to the temple, he had read some books of who knows what, Mayavadi. They were not so convinced of it. And when they started associating with the devotees, actually became devotees. There was a lot of devotees who had done yoga before or studied Mayavadi philosophy like that. But they were not very strong, very convinced. So it was easy to convince them of Krishna consciousness by giving them some prasad and having them participate in the chanting of the holy name, giving them association, be friendly to them and all that. I was a Buddhist at one point before I became a Buddhist. Yeah? And actually, at that time at that time in Germany, they had this rule that all the young boys had to do the military service, Wehrdienst, Bundeswehr. And in Germany, they had this rule. You could, how you say, neglect, how you say, military service if you would be able to convince how you say, the group that were testing you. I remember there was a politician, there was a priest, there was maybe even a psychologist or something like that. They were sitting there and they asked me why I didn't want to do my military service. I said, I'm a Buddhist. I'm non-violent. I cannot fight a war. No? And they accepted, even though I didn't have much knowledge. And another thing is, because this was some years after the war, Second World War, so at that time, many children were born in Germany after the war. So they never noticed me anymore. They didn't call me to some alternative right, service, like social service or working in the hospital or something like that. These were the alternatives they were giving you, if you didn't make the military service. Yeah. Anyway, so Hare Krishna. Yeah.
One question came in my mind regarding the Alaparambara.
Mhm.
So, like after Gauradesh, last Babaji is Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and but they are not in this like he's not his master, but this is the disciplic succession.
Six.
She's Shiksha.
And our specific succession also, the line also consists of six. And there has been criticism because of it, yeah, from other Vaishnava traditions that Bhakti Siddhanta accepted sannyas from his Shiksha Guru. Yeah, and anyway. So, but we see that we have to see everything by the result. The result is convincing.
In the very beginning, we heard that okay, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, when Lord Himself appears in front of us,
Mhm.
and even the learned person like Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya could not recognize his Lord before he heard. So, what is my position when I come across very elevated soul? So, in my ignorance, I might simply.
Yeah, so be careful.
So, I mean, to be careful.
The surest thing is Trinarapi Suni Trina Taruri Vasahishu Amani Amanade. And also, I mean, when you devotee for some time, you develop some, I say, how do you say in English? Subtle, I say, subtle understanding. You become more refined. In the beginning, Kanishta Adhikar, that says Kanishta Adhikar is a devotee, neophyte devotee, who doesn't have much knowledge, much experience. And he's very much, how you say, with his false ego, how you say, false ego. Even he might even conclude that, oh, I am the best of all these devotees. But then Madhyam Adhikari. Actually, Prabhupada said, unless you are Madhyam Adhikari, you shouldn't preach. Sorry for that. Yeah, because there's already some discrimination. Madhyam Adhikari understands who's more advanced, who's less advanced, who's on the same level, like that. Who is innocent, who's a demon, like that. all these things become revealed by progressing in Krishna consciousness, by the process of purification, by hearing, listening. That's why Srila Prabhupada gave us so many books. To have us understand things properly, see things in the proper perspective. That's it. So you're very fortunate. You've been a devotee for so many years already. Yeah. The only thing I criticize is that you don't give us so much association. you kind of mice it. You keep everything for yourself. We need the association. Actually, and also because you come from a cultural background. Okay? Prabhupada used to say that the Indians are most important allies. Huh? What do you think? What do you think? Okay, any more? Yes?
Does this mean that Kanishta Adhikaris are not meant to distribute books as well?
Well, in our mission, when you go out distributing books under the guidance of of devotees with more experience, then it's okay. What do you think? What does the Sankirtan Gita say? So if you do that, then Krishna will also bless you. And you will have some very nice experience. Everyone who's gone out distributing books, has this realization. It's not just you go to sell things like any seller. Actually, you become empowered, and actually you experience something very, very special. And also when you preach or you distribute books, often you notice, wow, I said that. Incredible. I never said that. I didn't know. No? Everyone who has gone out in book distribution knows. It's a very special Shakti when you go out and distribute books, following the order of Srila Prabhupada. So just continue under his guidance. You can learn a lot from him. He's been doing Sankirtan for many years. No? Yeah. We're very fortunate to have devotees here who have some experience on it, who've been devotees for years. So take advantage, learn. You want to say something? Say something. Huh? Louder, louder.
It's very important to do.
That means it's not sufficient to just follow the rules and regulations, chant 60 rounds and all this. Yeah? This is private, I say. Whereas Prabhupada was expecting us to assist in his mission, the preaching mission. Expand the movement of Chaitanya. There's so many places where they have never heard the holy name, they never received the book, they have no idea that we exist. Yeah? So much more to do. Don't think that's it. You have a temple here now, and somehow you manage to get everything paid properly. And many people come on Sundays, like today, in the afternoon, so many people will come. Yeah. Actually, there's so many more people who have never heard anything in it, who never tasted prasad. Wow. Who never taken part in the kirtan in the temple with devotees jumping up and down and singing. They never heard about Krishna and Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. We have so much more to do. And we need much more assistance. We need more devotees. There's so much more to do. I remember in Schloss Rettershof, when we had the castle close to Frankfurt. There was many devotees, many Sankirtan, many vans we had traveling all over Germany, distributing books. And our program was real German, At that time, we all thought our program is distribute books and make devotees. That's all. Yes. And they were traveling all week, the devotees. We're traveling all week, came back to Schloss Hendershof on Saturday. And they had a heavy kirtan. This was a castle. And we had a big hall in the center. And and so we met all there and made a kirtan, and the next day we all had blisters on our feet. The kirtan was so heavy. And then on Monday, out distributing books. And then we discovered the marathon, the Christmas marathon. Wow. Devotees started noticing that at Christmas time, people are very nice. Very, I don't know how to say it in English. Very nice, very special atmosphere. And then the devotees discovered, and they all take books at that time. And they're very charitable at that time. So the book distribution marathons, we said the Christmas marathon, then we changed the name, Prabhupada Marathon. Yeah. And at that time when the marathons were going on, devotees, they're very eager to distribute more than everybody else. And when they heard, this devotee did so much, he went out again, to distribute more. Anyway, this is Sankirtan fanatism. Any more comments or questions? Yes. Where are you from?
From London.
London.
Part of the TOE.
Yes.
Would you, don't know the history and background, would you enlighten us in terms of how you made the transition from being Buddhist to coming to Krishna consciousness?
It was all Krishna's right. Actually, I met the first devotee on the street. He was sitting on this was Shivananda, the first devotee who came to Europe. And he was sitting on the street in his little straw mat, sitting on a little straw mat. And with his eyes closed, he chanted Hare Krishna. And there were no books, nothing, because we didn't have books at that time. And then he had a little basket with some invitation cards. That was all. And I was really impressed when I saw him. Wow. What a gut. How is it in English? How is it in English? Yeah. To sit there and chant Hare Krishna in front of everybody. And so I was very impressed. And then I was living in a community with other, now we say hippies or something like that. Anyway, so we were living there, and one day, all of a sudden, a boy appeared in our community who he manifested as a devotee. He had long hair, like this thing around here, and he had a flute in his belt. And then later we discovered that this boy was sent by Srila Prabhupada from California. So this boy had come to the temple, and when Prabhupada discovered he spoke German, he immediately sent him to Germany. So he came from a German immigrants in California. So he came and he started living with us. And we were very impressed. He was very clean. He was always chanting with his bead bag. He was cooking for us. And then one day he took us to the temple. for the first temple. Very small shop. It wasn't even a shop.
This was in Hamburg,
Hamburg, yeah, in Hamburg.
1960,
Yeah, it was the first temple in Europe.
1969?
68. Actually, they came in 68. So at the end of 68. Anyway, so he took us to the temple. And we came late. They were already eating. And they gave us some prasad. It was so incredible. Then I started to go into the temple every day to eat. And then, one devotee started visiting us. You know, he had kind of, he put me on his radar, how do you say that? And he started visiting me. And he came riding a bicycle from one end of town to the other end of town. He's driving through the whole city, a dhoti, flying sikha. And he visited us, and he hardly spoke any German. But anyway, so somehow we became his, object of his meditation. How you say this? And so he brought us more and more to the temple like that. And then at one point, I didn't want to give up my independence. I noticed that you have to surrender that place. And giving up your liberty, your freedom. So I just got some car cars and then I traveled. And I was living in Christiania for some time. Well, it's not known anymore, but this was a big place where young people would live in Copenhagen. And after a while, I always chanted there with my car cars. And then I felt, well, nobody's interested, and I want to be with the devotees. So I went back. And then I moved in. Actually, we had no temple there. These are details. And then after a week or so, all of a sudden they said, Prabhupada is coming, Prabhupada is coming. And that changed our lives. We were just a few, very few devotees. Yeah? And Prabhupada made an initiation also. Even though we had only known Prabhupada for a week or so. I asked Prabhupada if I could be initiated. And Prabhupada moved his head like this. Like in India, when they say yes, and then Janmashtami Day, Prabhupada made an initiation. It was very, very special. First we fasted all day, and then Prabhupada initiated us. Yeah, and that's how I got stuck. I got stuck, and I somehow, by Krishna's grace, I never left. I always stayed.
Who was the first disciple in Germany?
There were 5 devotees in the initiation ceremony. There was a couple of they practiced yoga, and they became very impressed by Srila Prabhupada. The girl gave a pullover to Prabhupada as a gift, like a gift. And right after they were initiated, they disappeared. We never saw them. And then there was a devotee, actually, when Prabhupada came to Germany, Hari Griva came from America. Hari Griva was the editor of Srila Prabhupada's books. He was an English professor. And so he brought the Krishna book, the man who has the pages, like that, to speak with Prabhupada about the corrections, this and that. So, and he brought a young boy with him who wanted to be a disciple of Prabhupada. He came also from America. They came from America. So Prabhupada initiated him also. And my friend. We were actually friends. We have been friends for a long time. And then just before, and then we separated. We had some difference, philosophical differences. And we met again in the temple. And Prabhupada initiated us, these 5 devotees. It was the first initiation. I spoke with Dhananjaya. You know Dhananjaya, right? London? Yeah. he was one of the first devotees in London. And I asked him, I told him I was in the first initiation in Europe. And then he told me, no, actually Pawan had initiated some devotees in London by, how you say, by mayor, you see, by mayor. So they were the first devotees initiated. Yes. So like I told you, actually, I presented myself as a Buddhist, but I was not really a Buddhist. It was just a kind of one thing, one new thing again, kind of changing a lot of things. Yeah. But somehow they thought I was really convinced. This group tested me. Yeah. Dhananjaya is in England again, or is he still in Vrindavan?
He's in
Vrindavan? Yeah.
England.
Huh?
He travels between two.
Oh, yeah.
One important aspect of what you said is sometimes achar is more potent than prachar. Because the first impression that you had of the devotee was not his preaching, but his behavior.
Sorry?
The first impression you had of the devotee was not his preaching, was his actual behavior.
Yeah.
And achar
His
is
mood,
so much
his
more
mood.
important than prachar.
Yeah. I always mention that there is a video of Srila Prabhupada from the very beginning, the first temple in New York. And this is in black and white. And it's pretty long, this video. And Prabhupada doesn't say a word. There's no sound. It's just a video, Prabhupada black and white. Yeah? And when you start seeing this, you can, I say, keeps your attention. Prabhupada just sitting there with his feet back, sometimes looking at this and at this. Oh, yeah, do something, how you say, Spanish, gesticulando. Moving his fingers like this. Yes. When you would see Prabhupada, it was just impressive. When we went to, we got Prabhupada we went to the airport to get Prabhupada from the airport in Hamburg. That time. I was just impressed at seeing Prabhupada. The way he was. He was smiling when he saw us there chanting, he was smiling. And he had this shawl, how's that shawl? Yeah. Orange shawl, woolen shawl on his neck. And it was so effulgent. Because at that time, I mentioned it many times, at that time, in the 60s or like that, the airports were not like nowadays. Now the airports are huge. There's so much color, everyone flies. At that time when Prabhupada came to Hamburg, the airport was dark. Everyone was dressed dark, with suits and briefcases, and only rich people, would fly, because it was very expensive to fly. So in the middle of that kind of atmosphere, when we saw Prabhupada coming out, wow, it's like the sun, effulgence. And he was traveling with his servant. And I mentioned that many times, sorry to repeat it again. But Purushottam, his name was Purushottam. He was traveling with Prabhupada. And we saw him coming out with Sri Prabhupada. And he had a chain around his neck with a big juggernaut hanging around his neck. Because Jagannath had just become so popular amongst the devotees in America. Remember the whole story was Shamasunda's wife. She got the first little Jagannaths for Prabhupada, and she presented them before Prabhupada. Prabhupada immediately made obeisances to them, and he asked her, "Aren't there more?" She said, "Yeah." I don't want to say more about how she got them because it's public here. But yeah, in the beginning I was a little. Prabhupada was so merciful, And then after a while, Prabhupada started pressing more and more. I always give the example with I say the Schraube, what is it in English? Schraube? Screw, like the screw. And when you put a screw, first the screw moves. And more you turn it, the more it becomes, I say, stiff, and I say, fast. Is that English? Huh? Becomes hard, you can move it anymore. So in the beginning, Prabhupada was very, very tolerant with his people. Yeah, so many, like you hear here also. Yeah, there was an eccentric person joining in Vrindavan, and he created so much trouble that the temple president, I don't know the name, yeah, sannyasi was sannyasi. He just threw him out. That was also a custom at that time. I was in Hamburg when I joined, and Hans Buddha came to Germany. He gave me kind of, I had to manage the place, the first temple practice. And remember, there came a new Bhakti, and he was playing guitar, blues all the time in the ashram, day and night, playing blues, And at one point, I told him, Prabhu, stop this. This is a temple. We don't need blues here. And he didn't accept me. He didn't accept that. And he continued. So I threw him out. And then the first time I went to India in 74, I met him there as a sannyasi. As a sannyasi. And I didn't want to look at it. And then he walked up to me and said, thank you very much. You threw me out of the temple. After you threw me out of the temple, I became more serious. And he went to India, and he was doing nice service with Srila Prabhupada gave him some. Okay, I'm over time here. Srila Prabhupada gave. Hey, you came too late. Too late.
Yes, my train was.